You are standing in a long hallway, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzing and shaking like someone is strangling them. From somewhere, a low rumble crawls across the concrete, sounding like a giant beast dragging its claws underground. Then the floor jerks upward, not a vibration, but a brutal heave, as if the whole building was lifted and slammed down. Your spine bounces, jaw colliding with teeth, the metallic taste of blood spreading on your tongue. A filing cabinet bursts open, papers flying like a flock of panicked white birds. You hear a scream, not sure whose, because all sound is crushed under a roar that gets louder, deeper, and more absurd. You grip the handrail, palms sliding on the cold paint, heart pounding like it wants to break your ribs. The lights cut out. Darkness floods down in a single breath. Then the red emergency lights flare, turning the hallway into a tunnel of blood. In that red glow, faces are twisted, eyes bulging, mouths wide but silent because the roar has swallowed everything. The ceiling sprinkles drywall dust, tiny particles entering your nose, choking you, coughing, lungs feeling squeezed. Once again, the floor twists. You feel it actually rotate, not a hallucination. The world tilts like a boat hit broadside by a wave. Glass shatters. Overhead pipes burst, water spraying in white, freezing jets, hitting your neck like a slap. At the end of the hallway, a door bursts open, wind rushing in, carrying the smell of the sea. Not the smell of salt, of algae, of wet metal. A smell that does not belong here. You dash toward the emergency exit on instinct. The stairs are packed, shoulder to shoulder, fingernails clawing at shirts, broken sobs, cries for help stifled in throats. You hear the PA system crackle, words torn apart. Emmer, Gensi, Evac, Wade. But before the sentence is complete, the entire system is cut dead. Only the shaking remains, the roar, and your heartbeat. On a landing, you see a middle-aged man clutching his arm, eyes wide, staring into the void as if looking through the concrete. His lips mumble a sentence you can't hear. You only see them trembling in the red light, as if praying to something that no longer has a name. Then, a strange silence falls. Not true silence, but the moment you realize your Queen's I breathe. Your ears are deafened, as if pressed underwater. The shaking subsides. Like a beast, he's growing tired. People stand frozen on the stairs, looking at each other, gasping, hair matted with dust, faces speckled with water and sweat. You hear someone say, "It's over. Surely it's over." You want to believe that too. You want everything to end here. A terrifying shock, then evacuation, then recovery. You want the story to have a clear line. But nature doesn't tell stories the way humans want. A long siren screams from outside, not like a car horn, not like a fire alarm. It is a piercing wail, dragging on. Polbari, cold enough to raise goosebumps on your skin. That wail speaks in a language older than any signpost. You don't understand with logic, but your body understands immediately. Run to high ground. You push the exit door open. Wind whips your face, carrying a salty chill. The sky is lead gray, low clouds dragged close to the earth. Far away, the strip of coastline that looked so gentle yesterday is suddenly strangely empty. The water is receding. Not a normal tide, it withdraws, as if someone yanked the blue carpet off the ground. Patches of rock and mud are exposed. Wow. Fish flopping in desperation on the wet sand. You hear people screaming down in the street. The water's pulling back. It's pulling back. Some run down as if it's a rare spectacle to film. Others stand frozen, as if hypnotized. You stand on the steps, throat dry, unblinking, because that withdrawal is not a gift. It is the breath sucked in before the exhale. You look toward the horizon. There, a black line rises. initially thin as a thread. Then the thread thickens, grows taller, approaching without haste. It moves with the certainty of a signed death warrant. And when you understand what it is, your legs turn to jelly. People start to run, feet pounding on concrete. The siren still wails. The outdoor loudspeakers now blare, distorted in the wind. Tsunami, hi, evacuate, now! But those words are just dust. Because the thing coming needs no words. You run with the crowd up the slope, leading to higher ground. Your lungs burn. The cold air cuts your throat. You hear someone fall behind you, a startled cry. You don't look back. Not because you are heartless, but because a primal fear controls you. A fear that makes every morale in the book thin as paper. You reach a high terrace and turn to look. And in that moment, the world is torn in two. A wall of black water crashes into the town. It's not like waves at the beach. It is the entire ocean standing up. It drags timber, roofs, cars, signs, power lines, things that were daily life, here now turned into debris. You hear metal snapping, glass exploding like gunshots, human screams. A brief strip of sound swallowed whole. The water floods the streets like a starving beast, smashing into walls, invading windows, lifting everything. A bus spins like a toy. A fishing boat flies up, snagging on a power pole, then dragged away like a leaf. You see a woman holding a child. You run a few steps, then vanish behind a line of white foam. You want to scream their names, even though you don't know who they are? But your throat tightens. There is only the sound of your own breathing, rapid, panicked, helpless. The water hasn't stopped. It continues to flood, continues to crush. It doesn't pass through. It occupies. It turns the town into a moving swamp. And where roofs collide, where cars crush dining tables, where the most familiar things are tossed like trash. And amidst it all, there is a moment that chills you more than the roar. When you realize the water doesn't come just once. Another beat, it rises again, then another. As if the ocean is testing how long you can hold on. You back away, back touching a cold railing, eyes fixed on the scene. In the distance, through the mist and spray, you see a massive structure, blocks of concrete and steel rising like the ribs of a prehistoric beast. It still stands, but around it, everything is being swallowed. You don't hear an explosion. Not yet, just thin columns of smoke. Mwadi's starting to rise, like the breath of another monster just waking up. You don't know what that place is. You only see it's too big to be a normal factory, too many fences, too many towers and pipes, too much human confidence poured into concrete. The wind shifts. A strange smell creeps into your nose. Oil, burning wires, and something sharp, dry, like hot metal. You see people on the hill start to whisper, passing a message no one wants to say aloud. Some cover their mouths. Some look down at their hands as if they've just touched something invisible. You stand in the crowd, and for the first time you feel. Beacons a different fear, not the fear of drowning. It is the fear of something you cannot see, cannot punch, cannot outrun. Night falls quickly, as if the sky wants to hide what just happened. No city lights, only weak flashlights, sweeping across ash-gray faces, across eyes red from dust and crying, across wounds bandaged with shirts. You hear helicopters circling, blades chopping the wind, creating a headache-inducing sound. Rescue loudspeakers echo from afar, mixed with the sound of waves still biting the shore like a beast not yet full. You sit curled up on the cold cement. Wet clothes stick to your skin, the wind making you shiver uncontrollably. Every time you close your eyes, you see that black wall of water. Every time you open them, you see thick darkness, and in the darkness, the breathing of hundreds of people, broken breaths. as if everyone is counting how much longer they can live. Somewhere, someone starts reading names. Each name called out, then silence. Another name, then silence. That silence has weight. It presses on your shoulders like a wet stone. You realize the disaster isn't just the moment the water hits. The real disaster begins when the water recedes and leaves a void. The next morning, as the rain lightens, you look down at the valley. The town is no longer a town. It is a painting erased by a dirty hand. Roads vanished under mud and debris. Roofs lying upside down like flipped turtle shells. A bridge broken in half, the end sticking out like white bone. You see a wall clock. Caught in tree branches, hands stopped at a certain hour as if time itself drowned. And in the distance, where that massive, concrete structure stands, you see people in white protective suits moving like ghosts. They don't run. They walk fast but carefully, as if in a room full of broken glass where you're not allowed to make a sound. Helicopters fly low, dropping something. A white plume of smoke rises. You don't understand, but instinct tells you this is not just a natural disaster. This is a place where humans, Edim placed absolute faith in control. Days later, the name starts appearing in bulletins from field speakers. You hear about a massive offshore earthquake, about water columns tens of meters high, about waves coming in multiple sets. You hear numbers about magnitude, a number your ears don't want to accept. You hear the name of a region famous for discipline, for technology, for ruthless precision. And when you piece the fragments together, you know you are on the northeast coast of a nation that built its honor. On the ability to prepare for the worst. You also hear another name, spoken quieter, as if saying it loud makes it more real. A coastal nuclear power plant. At that moment, a cold sensation runs down your spine, not from the wind. You remember that concrete structure, the fences, the towers, and pipes. You remember the red lights in the hallway. Wanda, the roar under your feet, the sirens. You wonder, why put something so critical right next to the sea? Then you remember what people were proud of. They have seawalls. They have backup systems. They have scenarios. They have everything. Humans always have everything, until nature asks a simple question. What if everything isn't enough? You start hearing stories previously buried under layers of confidence. That years ago there were warnings about waves higher than the design, that there were debates. Techbauer Reborn about raising the walls, about placing backup generators higher, about preparing for a total blackout, that there were technical reports, graphs, dry lines of text, but they got stuck in the corridors of procedure, in the fear of change, in the shadow of cost and reputation. That humans, even when intelligent, can still choose to believe the most convenient version of the future. You don't need a lecture on politics. You see it right in how information is released, slow, measured, cautious, to the point of coldness. Words polished so no one is immediately responsible. You hear phrases like possibility, assessing, under control. But you are sitting in a land clawed to shreds, and you know, control is sometimes just a way of speaking, to keep the world from panicking for a few more hours. Then the images start spilling out. An explosion blowing the roof off an industrial building. A cloud of white smoke shooting up, men in protective gear bowing as if fighting an invisible wind. You hear the word radiation spoken last, like a late confession. You hear about cooling, about fuel heating up, about systems losing power because the waves drowned the backup generators. A perfect chain of effort and failure. A test no one wanted to take, and nature handed out the paper. You walk through temporary shelters, the smell of sweat, damp blankets, canned food, babies crying, old people coughing, muddy shoes lined up straight trying to keep a last bit of order. You see people silent more than speaking. Because what is there to say? That your house floated away? That your family vanished? That you don't know? If you're carrying something invisible inside you, no sentence is enough. Only eyes looking down and hands clenched tight as if letting go means dissolving. One afternoon, you are taken to the edge of the exclusion zone. There are fences and warning signs. There are uniformed men standing guard. Wind blows across the empty fields, sounding like a long whistle. You look into the void behind the fence, where houses still stand, but hold no people. Windows dark, gardens abandoned, a bicycle fallen by the road, a dog with no one left to walk it. The scene doesn't look like the aftermath of war. It looks like a movie where humanity was cut from the frame overnight. You hear a volunteer whisper, "They had to leave," because no one is sure what was released. His voice doesn't shake, but his eyes avoid yours, as if afraid your gaze will ask more. You remember the feeling when the water receded, the moment everyone saw the seabed and thought they were witnessing a miracle. Humans always have a moment like that before disaster, a moment of confusing a warning with a rarity, and afterwards, the price is paid in things that cannot be refunded. Weeks later, when you can sleep a night without waking up to an imagined roar, you start to understand this is a historical cut. Not just because of the dead and missing, not just because coastal cities were erased, but because faith was washed away too. The faith that if rich enough, modern enough, disciplined enough, humans can build a system immune to nature's chaos. That faith shattered like glass under the waves. You remember those concrete blocks, the sea walls thought to be impregnable? You remember how people spoke of design, of standards, of scenarios. You think of something else, a very sophisticated arrogance. We tricken, not the chest-thumping kind challenging nature, but the kind wrapped in charts, in signatures, in the belief that past data is enough to lock the future in a fitted box. But the future didn't fit. The sea didn't sign a contract. The ground didn't read the report. And when they decided, they didn't need a reason for humans to accept. You hear stories long ago, right on this coast, there were massive waves in history. Folk tales of water-swallowing villages. Someone warned, recorded, reminded that this coast is not gentle. But over generations without such a wave, fear was eroded into a blurry memory. And a blurry memory cannot compete with the demand for electricity, with growth, with convenience, with decisions made in closed rooms. You are not an expert, you are just a survivor. But you know the feeling when the ground, the thing you always assumed was permanent, suddenly turns into an angry animal. You know the feeling when the ocean, the thing you thought was just scenery, stands up like an army. And you know the worst feeling? When the disaster doesn't end in mud and water, but drags on into invisible suspicion. One night, you look back at the sea from afar, where the breakwater has been temporarily patched, where machines roar day and night, trying to fill a wound. The moon hangs like a thin piece of cold metal in the sky. The waves lap steadily, sounding gentle to the point of insult. You stand there and suddenly understand why the haunting won't let go. Because nature can return to peace immediately after killing, but humans cannot. You think of other cities, other coasts, other plants, dams, buildings. Systems we call safe because we need to believe that to keep living. You think of the meetings, the signatures, the delays because it's unnecessary, too expensive, low probability. You think of how we always choose the cheapest option for the future, then pay the highest price when the future arrives. The sea still beats, the wind still blows. And in the steady sound of waves, you hear a question no one speaks, but everyone understands. If one day the ground roars beneath your feet again, and the water retreats from the shore as if inhaling, will you realize it is a warning? Or will you stand watching for a few more seconds? Take one more video, have one more moment of curiosity,